Good morning for the people who have just started recording. I've just gone on a 5-minute waffle about how important training is, but if you've missed it, you've missed it. The idea of today, and certainly over the next coming couple of months, is Peter's going to be focusing on a particular nuance inside the program. We all should know how to use the program, but what we're going to be doing is saying, okay, today we're just going to focus on this item, this little part, and today we're going to be talking about becoming aware or broadening your awareness when it comes to the money profile. So that's enough of me carrying on, and we've had a few more people that join us, so welcome everybody. Pete, over to you.
Thanks, Matt. All right, well, as everybody, the regular attenders know, and I will repeat for the benefit of new attendees like Wayne, who's a new IQPro client. These sessions are mainly about reinforcing the training model. You know, we don't go off, focus, so to speak. I mean, obviously there have been other things discussed in the sessions with Paul Bowden and things like that. But I mean, we're trying to keep on focus and I guess looking at quantifying the actual training regime that is presented to every client as a sort of a foundation measure. But what we're going to do in the course of doing that now is to try and broaden awareness levels, because I think, further to what Matthew was saying earlier, it's all very fine to have noble objectives, but you've got to know the best way to achieve those objectives and pursue that path. It's no use saying, oh, well, I want to be a winner, and then sitting back and thinking, oh, well, if I say that enough, I'll be a winner. That doesn't happen. It's about saying, righto, I want to achieve a certain objective. What are the best ways to assist me to do that? And then enact those methods. And today, so I'm going to be playing my small role in sort of alerting everybody to what I consider to be sometimes the forgotten elements in terms of scrutiny of races. We all know about money gaps, and we all know about cumulative percentage levels, and we know the parameters and all that sort of stuff. But it's about putting all that together in one total package to maximise awareness, so that it can assist you to determine whether a possible procedural trading opportunity is a worthy one for you or not. And that's part of being proactive or part of proactive selectivity. Which is a lovely term. I love that, proactive selectivity. All right, okay. So let's sort of try.
I've taken note of that, Pete. Thank you. I'll just note that down. Put that in the lexicon of our vocabulary.
I thought you'd like that one, Matt.
Thanks.
Okay, righto. As I was saying, let's go through and have a look at some examples that hopefully will highlight these points that I've just made and Matthew made earlier. All right, so the first one, if we look at this, quite obviously looking at the money gap and looking at the cumulative percentage level, you could think to yourself, well, I can apply the second place allowance here, because you've got 68.56% of the money covered by the top three runners. You've got quite a sizable gap here, which is considerably bigger than the minimum requirement of 1.7. And I suppose, relatively speaking, at the 1 minute mark, these top three runners here are attracting, strong, quite, I suppose, clearly defined strong money, as I said, relatively. But let's weigh up all the pros and cons here. First and foremost, it's the first race or the second race at Queen Being. Now, let's just put the selections in, applying the allowance, right? So we'll do that. Now, you see down here, the pool is is in breach, but it's 4,570, and we know from the allowances that if we have a pool between $4,000 and $5,000, we're entitled to use our discretion and make an allowance. But do we want to do it? You know, is it the smartest thing to do in this instance? And I would think the answer would be it would be questionable, because firstly we're dealing with the second race at Queanbeyan. Now Queanbeyan is no metropolis, right? It would be quite a small meeting. It's an early race in the day. The pool is $4,500, right? Now, the pool, you could guess, would be not likely to increase all that much, and indeed, if we take it to the next interval, you see it only goes up to 5,236, so we've only just scraped over the minimum requirement of $5,000. And furthermore, even though these runners are attracting the strongest money, there's not much money around anyway. I mean, it's sort of pretty, you know, it's not a race that where you would like to be, I suppose, being expansive to the extent that you're going to make two allowances. You're going to make an allowance for a percentage, and you're going to make an allowance on the pool. You know, it just so early in the day. I think that it would be far better advised to save your betting ammunition for something a little bit more clearly defined and obvious. And so even though, yes, applying the allowances, we could trade in this on reflection of all making all the considerations, it's probably not the best one to start off with for the day. You know, do you think it's worthy of investing your hard-earned money? And probably the answer would be no, because who knows what quality of horses they're running in this race anyway.
Oh, Pete, just one thing, if I could interrupt.
Yeah, sure, mate.
Actually, for everybody who's been here before and the new guys, my job is not to provide comic relief. It's actually to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead and open up the question box, or even the chat box. Question would be better because then it's all in one place for me. And type it in there, and I'll interrupt Peter at some stage and ask those questions on your behalf. So my job is to curate the questions. So Pete, back over to you.
All right, thanks, Matt. Okay, so we're going to no-bet this race, and as we can see, looking at the and just by quite legitimately using the pool, you know, as our reason for elimination. You can see, in retrospect, it was a good move to make, because the race would have ended up losing, and you know, it's psychologically a bit taxing when you have your first foray for the day on the second race, and you're down by $200 or whatever your betting amount is. So these are things that are important. These are the things that the subtle things that don't sort of feature in the actual training or the application of processes, but they are key elements nonetheless that can, in totality, give you some idea of whether a race is a worthy one, worthy of your involvement or not. Right, moving on to the next one, MRO2. Sorry, MRO1, my mistake. Okay, now here, no, that's not the one, sorry, MRO, I was right, MRO2, my apologies, MRO2, righto. Okay, now here, as we can quite clearly see, we have a $2 favourite, a money gap bigger than multiple 2, a sizable pool down here. So at the 1 minute interval you'd be thinking, oh, well, hey, look, we've got the basic ingredients of a mega factor. But on reviewing the actual money, and that's the key to this, as I said in the beginning, the money profile is, I feel, is paramount, of paramount importance. So often over the years I've found that the money profile or the money flow or whatever you want to call it is the one thing that people tend to ignore. They look at all the other things on the left-hand side, all the other indicators, but they don't actually go and look at the source over on the right-hand side. And when you think about it, it is the money profile in races that create all the other indicators ultimately. You know, it's the money that creates the location and size of money gaps. It's the money that creates cumulative percentage levels. So I feel it's a greater insight can be gained by assessing from right to left, so cause and effect, looking at the money and determining how does that relate to the money gap situation and the cumulative percentage levels. And, you know, for instance, if you have a defining money gap that gets bigger with every interval as you go down to the 1 minute interval, then that tells you or reinforces the fact that the money for the runners above that gap have got to be strengthening in the betting considerably over the ones below. But conversely, if a money gap gets considerably smaller, then that would tend to suggest that maybe there are runners below the defined group that maybe are posing a risk such that their inclusion might be sensible in the group selection. So, you know, these things are important. It's not just sort of saying, oh, well, I've got a money gap. A money gap means really nothing. It's the size of the gap, it's the location, it's, you know, it's progress, if you like, down to when you're going to make your final decision. But I mean, here, if we look at the money situation in this race, it doesn't really support the mega factor option, because you can see here the money's quite strong here relatively for the favourite. It's strong there, it's strong there, but look at what happens here. It just dies at the 1 minute interval. And if we go back and have a look at this, we can see that back at the 4 minute interval, for instance, we had a $1.80 favourite. We go to 3 minutes, still at $1.80. At 3 minutes, it becomes $1.90, so it's increasing in value. At 2 minutes, $1.90, and at 1 minute, it becomes $2. So in other words, the value of the win dividend value for the favourite has trended, has blown out, and we want it shortening or getting less, because if it gets less, it's a reflection of ever strengthening money support, which in turn would tend to justify mega factor. So on that basis, mega factor, the observation of the money flow plus all the other indicators would suggest that mega factor is not, you know, is not probably the most sensible way to go given what's presenting. And of course, as we well know, that applying the money gap selections would create too many combinations. So there's another race that procedurally could have been a mega factor that has been ruled out because of the reasons we've enunciated. Okay.
Pete, I'm just going to jump in there and ask if anybody has any questions about that. Is everybody okay with that? Actually, and whilst people might be typing or just, you know, nodding in agreement, Pete, when would be the recommended start for analysis? When would you say, you know, I wouldn't want to come to the race any later than the
5 minutes. 5 minutes, I believe that is what I indicate to everybody in live webinars. Start reviewing races around about 5 minutes in trifecta mode. Now, as I've said, and that's a good point you make, Matthew, because I can expand on this. At 5 minutes, it gives you a chance to do an overview. So you've got to economise your scrutiny time in races. you know, you've got to deal with the constraints of time. So if you look at a race at 5 minutes and you think, well, in trifecta, I've already got 140 combinations and no money gaps, and the money's all over, is you know, there's just no gaps to define anything high up in the field. I've got 140 combinations. Then that's a race you can virtually ignore as a possible trifecta race. Why waste your time looking at it any further? It's not going to develop into one. So you can sort of devote all your time to percentage return. And so that cuts your scrutiny time considerably, right?
Perfect.
So, you know, at 5 minutes you've got plenty of time to do these things. But if you look at 5 minutes and you think, oh, this is a possibility of being a trifecta opportunity, then I recommend that you actually put in the money gap selections that apply at that time. You physically make them, because then it's a simple matter to take those selections to the next interval for reassessment, and then the next one and the next one, and it gives you a heap of time. So there's some continuity in what you're doing, and you know, it gives you a heap of time to look at all these other subtler aspects, you know, the percentages, the money gaps, the money, all these things, so that you can sort of more confidently decide, do I make an allowance, could an allowance be made here? Could an allowance be on the cards at a future interval based on what I'm seeing? Things like this. So you're sort of ahead of the game, and that's what it's all about.
That's great, Pete. Wayne, one of our newest members, has written that he totally understands. So that's good.
All right.
Actually, one question that Wayne is asking here: does it matter with no WUP number and a positive UDIF?
No. That more applies with percentage return, simply because we're looking at late market money, you know, more so, and also. Remember, you can, for confirmation, as I've indicated in many previous live review session, particularly later in the year, you know, we can use percentage return as well. So you can see in percentage return, we're seeing much the same sort of money profile here.
Yeah.
You can use return as a guide, but very often you can get a perspective on the right way to go by just looking at the money flow, and how it's developing. And that's what I wanted to focus on today.
Perfect.
Because sometimes you can go into percentage return and you get a false impression based on what you see there.
Mm-hmm.
There is a contradicting aspect to it from time to time. Sometimes it is very reliable to use percentage return, but sometimes there is a conflicting element that can confuse. So you want to get used to not just relying on percentage return mechanically to determine what you do in trifecta. Do the analysis in trifecta first and use percentage return as a reinforcing agent.
And also, you know, one of the things that I hear many times when talking with Paul and George and other traders who are successful is, you know, if there's any doubt, get out. Like there's no requirement to actually place a trade. Just don't place a trade, because you know, to place one successful trade and put $400 in the bank, great. You make one unsuccessful trade, one mistake, you've got to make one more to be zero, and then another one to get back to. So you've got to make another trade to be profitable. So basically, you've got to do twice the work.
That's quite right.
So it's a good idea to, if you're not sure, if you don't like it, if there's something that doesn't work for you, you know, for example, in this race that we were just looking at $1,000, which was in the third horse down, we're not going to cover that. Just get out.
Yeah, exactly right.
Hey, Nick has just put his hand up. Nick, we usually use the question box, please. So Nick, if you've got a question, just go ahead and type it into the question box or the chat box, and I'll answer it. I'll interrupt Pete as we go. We've found that over the time that we don't hand the microphone over to people because of various internet and technology issues that some people may or may not have. So, Nick, if you've got a question, just pop your just pop it in the question box, please. Back to you, Pete.
Okay, well, just moving on. Here's another example of a possible mega factor. You know, you might look at this and think, oh, yeah, $1.90. You know, this is at 1 minute, and you know, a big gap associated with the favourite here. But once again, if we look at the development of the money, I mean, it's very strong, but it starts to, you know, become a bit suspect here. And anyway, if you're doing the review as you go along, you can see quite clearly at 3 minutes we had a banker trifecta on our hands, right? So at this stage, you know, we'd be sort of looking to do this. Right, remember, covering 80% of the money down to a money gap is the requirement when you're going to go banker. But all of a sudden, at 2 minutes, we go $1.80. So the win dividend has increased, which is going the wrong way. It's blowing, in other words, the price is blowing out rather than shortening, to use the racing parlance. And we go to the 1 minute mark, and of course it goes to $1.90. So we've gone from banker to mega, but that's not what we want it the other way round. You know, so an increasing win dividend like that is a sign that that perhaps the money support for the favourite is not as clearly defined as it should be. Does it warrant my taking the added risk of singling the favourite out to come first alone? And when we see these sorts of indicators, it probably would suggest that applying the mega factor option is probably not the smart way to go. So, and in each of these instances, these races, elimination avoided loss, because they all would have lost had we traded along procedural lines. So it is important to be analytical in this way and sort of take in and embrace these, I guess, subtler aspects. Okay, I'll go back up to where I'm now. I can't see it. Oh, there it is. All right, let's go to have a look at a few percentage returns now. All right, what have we got? We've got a weak favourite, number one. Now, our potential trading group against the weak favourite would be these two runners. I mean, defined by this gap, because I mean they're the most money competitive. So let's start by defining that group. But of course, we certainly, the group is not holding the required minimum of 47.5% cumulative money. And furthermore, we can see that the favourite's got numbers here and a negative value in the U-diff column. So we know that when those indicators, will tell us straight away that the favourite should be added to the group. And when we add the favourite to the group, we've got a group of three runners. We've still got a trading race on our hands, as we can see. And so there is a valid trading race, because you can see quite clearly that all three runners are negative in the U-diff column. We've got money, like numbers for all three of them. I mean, quite clearly in the cumulative dollars column and at the 1 minute mark, they're the strongly supported runners. They have been all the way along. So that's a valid trading group. I mean, it was not a winner, but as we know, we're not going to be successful every time. You can't win them all, as they say. Okay.
Well, that's a point I actually make during the sales process and when speaking to clients sometimes, Pete, is that the correct selection and a winner are not always hand in hand. If they, I mean, it'd be great if they were, but this is a numbers game, and you need to be selective, and that is exactly a trading race. But it's a loser, and that's just the way it goes.
Exactly right. It's a good point to be made, and it's part of the psychology of using this software map, as you would agree, and I'm sure your intention is to reinforce this with potential clients. You know, you've got to learn that what we're trying to do is overall we're trying to trade in the races that offer the greatest probability of giving us the desired outcome we want. Mindful of the fact that even with the best intentions, we're not going to win them all. But the key is to be trading consistently so that if you go back and do a review of what you've done in the day, and you're not going to be shattered by the ones that have lost, because they're going to be part and parcel of the overall generation of net profit anyway. You know, they're the reality that you've got to have in order to generate the net profit. So the key is to be consistent, and you know that's why we were quite happy to show races that are definite qualifiers but end up losing. I mean, we can't do anything about number 7. Now, where did number 7 come from? I mean, you know, there would be nobody that can honestly say, oh, well, I looked at what was happening and I picked number 7 as the winner. That would be a load of baloney. But, you know, if you're consistent and you stick to guns and have confidence in your ability, then the winning opportunities will present themselves. And the winners will come from racing opportunities as strong and as clear-cut as this one.
And it's consistent application of the rules that have been continuing to be proven.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, if you've got I guess we could using we'll use football, rugby league, whatever you like, as an example, or any sport, but I'll use football as an example. You know, if you've got a strong game plan and you've got the players to play the game, right? You've got a good team, you've got confidence in yourself, your teammates, and you've got a strong game plan. Just because you're down a few points at half time doesn't mean you throw the game plan out the window. You know, the important thing is to go in and reinforce the strength of that game plan and reinforce your faith in each other as a team. And how many times have we seen results just turn around in second halves, you know? Because teams, and the All Blacks are a classic example of that. They never ever panic. They never lose their focus. They can be down 10, 15 points with 2 minutes to go, and they stick to their plan. And invariably and very annoyingly, they're successful.
Very annoying. Let's move along.
Oh, yes. Why conduct this torture? All right, okay. Okay, so moving on to another percentage return example. Now, here's a good case in point of a race where, you know, we're going to include the strong favourite, obviously. We have to. Our clearly defined dominant trading group has got to be these two runners. You know, together they're holding 55% here. Big defining separator, very strong cumulative money, very clear-cut 1 minute money definition all the way along for the two runners. No doubt about that being a super strong trading opportunity and a winner. Not surprisingly. Similarly, here's another one, pretty much the same. You've got, this time, we've got the added reinforcement or confirmation of numbers for both runners in the WUP column, and both with negative values, right? Negative values in the UDIF column, all the others are positive in the race, right? So the two runners in the selected trading group are shortening in price. Why? Because they're attracting the dominant money, and the money is getting stronger for those runners the closer we draw to the 1 minute mark. So these are the sort of trading opportunities you cannot afford to miss, because their strike rate is right up there. I mean, I'm sure that I would get endorsement from a lot of clients by saying that. Okay, so and this time we've got an example where we could happily trade against a weak favourite. You can see the favourite's number 2, 20.69%. Our potential trading group initially are these 5 runners. We're made up of these 5 runners here. Now, you can see quite clearly that we've got money competitiveness cumulatively and also at the 1 minute interval. But most importantly, our group is holding the mandatory 47.5 minimum cumulative money, and the favourite showing no WUP numbers, a positive value in the UDIF column. Notice also in the WUP column that 4 out of the 5 runners have numbers, and 4 out of the 5 runners are negative in the UDIF column, where the favourite's positive. So the favourite is the win dividend of the favourite is increasing or blowing out because the money support for the favourite is easing off. And if we go back, you can see at the 2 minute interval, we had what we would consider to be a strong favourite, based on the fact that the favourite was at the top of the field with its own red separator. So at 2 minutes, we would be including this favourite because the money profile tells us it would be too risky to trade against it. If you look here, the differential in money is quite substantial. So the favourite's too dominant at the 2 minute mark, but certainly not when you get to the 1 minute mark. And so all the indicators once again point to a worthy trading opportunity, this time against the weak favourite. And we all know, or those of us who have sort of completed the training, current training, know that in most instances we're including favourites in our groups in percentage return, but there are appropriate opportunities where, seldom, but they do occur, where trading against the weak favourite is quite happily undertaken and successfully undertaken, like in this race, with number 3 being the winner. Okay, so that's...
Oh, Peter, I might just jump in there for a second. You mentioned just now those of you who have taken up the current training, and just a moment, excuse me. That's a little gem that might have been missed by a lot of people here, is that there is current training. We're always updating. Peter delivered to us for editing and production a new mini module 2 days ago. We are always updating and upgrading our training. It is beholden on you, the customer, to stay up to date. We do change the rules every now and then because racing changes. If we were to trade today like we did 15 years ago, nobody would be making any money. So it's about being flexible and continuing to move forward with the racing industry and the data that we're seeing and being presented with. So, so do yourself a favour and go ahead and review the current training, submit data sheets, and this is your business. There should be a business plan in place where you go, right, well, I am here every Saturday or every Saturday that's available. I am running the program or collecting data every day, and I'm doing these 3 or 5 things that are going to make sure that I'm successful on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And one of them is, on a monthly basis, popping into the training area, seeing what the latest is, sending through a data sheet that might be a question for you, and saying, "Hey Pete, what's going on here?" All right, so I'll pass it back over to you, Pete.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, all right, so now I just want to quickly look at a couple of trifecta races on the 21st of January, getting back to what we were discussing earlier about being aware of money flow and how that can play a valuable role in the ultimate selections that are made. And in this particular instance, we're looking at a possible banker trifecta. Now, procedurally, we could bring second down to that level there, and of course third down to there. But that creates, of course, 12 combinations. But if we look at the money profile at the 1 minute interval, the money profile would suggest that it would be a smart risk minimisation move to include those 2 runners for second as well, because we've got money down here that's more than the money for this runner here particularly, but we don't have sort of clear-cut sort of money definition for this group of runners here. If I take the selections out again so it's easier to see, if we had like a 3-tiered money profile, that is the strong money for the favourite, then clearly defined secondary money for this group, dropping down to a tertiary group here with a clear fall off of money, then leaving second at number 5 would be quite acceptable. I mean, it's acceptable now, but I think looking at the money profile at the 1 minute mark, it would suggest that the addition of those 2 runners would be a good exercise in risk minimisation. So once again, it's sort of balancing risk against return. And if we go to percentage return, you can see in percentage return that reinforces that move. So, quite clearly we can make a confident decision in favour of those being the ultimate selections in this race. AR04 is another one I wanted to look at. Now, if we go to percentage, if we look at the money gap selections, they are as presenting. They're just their basic group selections at the 1 minute interval. However, if we go to percentage return, we get a different perspective, as you can see, because we don't have an intermediary red separator here like we do in trifecta. So that would possibly suggest that even though over the longer term those the selections that we've made, the basic money gap selections that we've made would be relevant and acceptable, when we look at the, I suppose, more immediate aspect of percentage return, that is the late money going on runners over the last 5 intervals, you can see that the suggestion is that covering the top 2 runners as per our first place selection would be the way to go. But of course, more extensive coverage for second would be also required as well. And of course, if we do that, of course, it rules the race out. And here's another example where, by taking that evasive form of action, we've bypassed a race that would have lost us money. And one final one All right, now if we go back to the 2-minute interval here, you can see what our selections would feature. These two runners for first, down to here for second, and we could stop third at this level here because we're holding the full 90% coverage down to runner 2, and we've got a like a multiple in the money gap column of 1.44, so it's bigger than 1.3. See the money's falling away on these lower 2 runners, so we can apply the money gap allowance quite happily. Now, are we going to, I guess, are we going to look at changing those selections at the 1-minute mark, given that we've got the, you know, I suppose the arrival at 1 minute of a money gap at runner 1? I mean, do we respond to that and drop back to that level, or do we leave the selections where they are? Now, I would think that based on what we saw at the 2-minute interval, you know, the money pattern and what have you, we were covering down to this level here. So I would think that even though this money gap has appeared at the 1-minute mark, which could redefine our selections for second, based on what we're seeing in terms of the money here and here, particularly, leaving the selections as they are would be the smart way to go. It's because when all said and done, this money gap here of 1.53 is, you know, just over the minimum size being 1.5, and so it stays in place. But I mean, so I suppose it bears out what I'm trying to indicate here is that you've got to weigh up all the pros and cons, and the indications were at the 2 previous intervals that coverage of 4 runners per second was warranted. Do we want to adjust that on the basis of quite a small, you know, a money gap that's only appeared at the 1-minute mark? Do we respond to that and remove a selection, or would it be sensible to leave the selections that we already had in place at 2 minutes as our final choice of selections? And I think here it would weigh in favour of the latter, and you can see quite clearly that making that that choice here would have meant the difference between winning and losing, because the ultimate trifecta outcome was 3, 4 and 1. And we can see by leaving the selections as they are based on our money observations over the course of the last 3 intervals, we've picked up number 4 for second place. And this would be an instance where percentage return might sort of confuse the issue a little bit. So I think it is important to certainly by all means use percentage return as a confirming medium, but rather than just mechanically use percentage return, be prepared to do your own analysis of money profile in trifecta as well, because it can help reinforce confident decision making when trading and not trading in races. So that pretty much brings us to the end today.
Well, thanks, Pete. There's been some good comments going backwards and forwards here. We've got a trader who was in full agreement with our comment earlier in reference to being flexible and changing your ideas. I'll just read it. I'm in total agreement with both of you, which of course is the best way to start any conversation with me and you, Pete. I'm in total agreement with both of you. As you are aware, I've been successful with the program for more than a decade, changing my trading and ideas constantly in positive aspects. I now trade less, evolving with the program to a point where I've traded between 5 and 10 trades on major metro days. And I went back with a question of how many trades has he done in the past, and the answer is over 20. And his strategy was a bit like throwing mud at a wall, but now it's more refined and clearly defined to a set of rules. So especially the most successful people are the ones who are evolving. As some of you know, that over the last 10 years I've been learning a martial art, and the master will often stand in front of the class and say, it's very frustrating with somebody who's been doing this for, 6 months to a year, so I know this. Like, oh, today we're going to do this, which is probably the most basic move. Some of the younger ones get frustrated and say, I know this. The guys that have been there 10, 15 years try to squeeze a little bit of extra knowledge out, a 1% difference, and those 1%ers cumulatively over time make all the difference. So so look, one thing that Wayne suggested is when we put new training up, can we date it so we know which is the most recent? I think actually it's a really good idea, Wayne. We'll do that. A couple of notes from my day today, and hopefully you're all taking notes, because I do, is data sheets. Do send those data sheets to Peter if you've got questions or thoughts or comments. We get sent a lot of information referencing, I've got an idea, has anybody thought of this in the past? What about this type of trading style? Yes, we do. We don't share your ideas unless we're authorised to. But somebody else might have already thought about that, and we might be able to tweak or add some extra ideas to your existing thoughts. So do send those across to Peter and I as we go forward. Also, just in reference to the in-person user groups, that chap who was been successful more than a decade is part of those one of those groups. I'm not going to tell you which one, but it's very important, I think, to avail yourself of the opportunity to go into those groups. We have them in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, and 3 in New Zealand. I think 1 in Auckland and Christchurch, and I'm not sure about the third one in New Zealand. Avail yourself of the opportunity. If you're not part of one and you want to be part of one where you get together once a month with other users of the program, email linda@trilogics.com.au. She's our membership relationship manager. She manages all of that stuff. Also, I'm going, for people who want to run an in-person group, and the best way to learn something, and the first person to ever actually start one of these was somebody who was struggling, and so they said, you know what, I'm going to try to gather together other people, because you are the sum of the 5 people you actually associate with. So if you associate with other successful or other users of the program, you will become more successful. And so I'm going to be running a webinar for the leaders of those groups next week, and Linda will send out an email referencing that. So guys, there's lots of stuff we're doing. We've got lots of really cool things planned for this year. We're going to be doing some having the user groups get together as a online tutorial style. We're going to be doing some in-person stuff. Peter and I are going to be travelling the country, New Zealand and Australia again this year. Looking forward to that. And we're going to, beg your pardon, Pete?
I said jolly troubadours that we are.
Yeah, that's right. so hopefully I've got enough air miles to afford ourselves that upgrade that we had last time, Pete.
That's a priority.
A priority, that's right. So we'll make sure those. Wayne's asking, how do we get copies of these webinars? We email them out. And Brian's asking about greyhounds, and I can answer those questions offline if anybody wants information about greyhounds. The long story short is we don't have long-term knowledge on or data on greyhounds, but there are some ideas on how to apply greyhounds. If anybody else has ideas on how they trade greyhounds, please let me know. And one thing that very experienced trader was saying is, he says, I train people in areas, and one thing I tell them is you're going to have 20 years experience or 1 year's experience 20 times. So it's about developing and growing, is what that trade, what he's trying to say there. All right then, guys. Well, look, I think I've covered all of those things: the data sheets, in-person user groups, and availing yourself of the current training. Pete, have you got any final words of wisdom for us?
No, I just hope everybody drew some benefit from today's activities, and thanks very much for your attendance, and we'll look forward to seeing you all, or having you all join us in a fortnight's time.
Very good. Actually, we're going to be doing a Wednesday, aren't we, Pete? We're going to be doing a Wednesday in a fortnight to see if we can capture those that can't make it to the Saturday. We're going to do it on a Wednesday early evening, aren't we?
Yeah, I think it's around about planned for around about 5 in the afternoon. Yeah. That's our time, or that's Queensland time, or whatever. Because we've got to remember that that would be 8 o'clock over in New Zealand. So we've got to try and embrace everybody that we can. So yeah, so that we're going to experiment with that and see how popular that and well attended that is, and yeah, so something different.
Very good. All right, Pete. Well, we're always evolving here, and if you've got any thoughts, comments, or questions, please email me, matthew@trilogics.com.au, and of course, if you need help with the program, Pete's your man. Thank you very much, guys and girls who have attended today, and I will email this session out soon.
All right, goodbye everybody, and we'll look forward to having your company next time around, and talk to you very soon, Matt.
Bye for now. See you, Pete.
Bye now.